Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm Lynn Woodland. The Miracles course is a year-long course about how to live a miraculous life. It's not based in A Course in Miracles. I've been finding more and more I need to mention that because that's people's first assumption. I would say it's Course in Miracles friendly, but really it's based on my own exploration of what gives rise to miraculous experience. It's been really a 40-year career for me. And I've broken this course down into 48 little bite-sized experiences that touch a lot of ground, from more our emotional side to our spiritual side to our behaviors, the whole thing, because we're not looking at how to manifest a result using the law of attraction. This is more about how to truly gain spiritual mastery so that we see our lives become more effective, more joyful, more purposeful, more abundant, more serendipitous, with little miracles happening every which way. And that's more than a one exercise fits all. So we go a lot of different places. And I work with the four seasons, the cycle of the seasons, as a template for giving context to our spiritual work here, because it really does give a lovely overview of the process of birth, death, life, beyond everything, manifestation, letting go. And where we are now is really starting to, we're in winter, deep winter still, but starting to come out of the darkest part of the year into a little bit more light. And we've been working this month with our connection, our understanding of God. And as a kind of a fitting follow-up to last week's meeting with God, we met God, for those of you who weren't here. This week's journey takes us into the practice of prayer. Now, this isn't the only lesson in the curriculum on prayer, because we do something on prayer pretty much every season. In the lighter seasons, when we're immersed in the physicality of growing and manifesting what we dream up in the winter, our work then is with directed prayer, where we seek out the assistance of God to make something happen. We ask God, ask and you shall receive. And in the fall, we work with healing prayer. And in the spring, we work with miracle-making prayer. And many of the themes touched upon this week appear in these lessons at other times of the year. Yet the way into prayer that best fits with this time of year is kind of different from any other. Our work with prayer now, in that we're in more of an internal hibernating time of year, it isn't about asking for something or creating something in the physical realm. Here, it's much more about being in relationship with God and knowing God as our beloved. And if you don't like the word God, well, we did some work with that last week. So review that session. I'll tell you how later. Now, all next month, now it's kind of perfect to be working with the idea of God as our beloved this week, because all next month, we'll be exploring the theme of relationships. So this is kind of a transition from being in the void to being in beloved relationship with God to being in relationship with our fellow human. And it's important that we give attention to our relationship with God, because, after all, in any other relationship, Will we go to a stranger with our most intimate fears and our hopes and our wants and our needs? Would we knock on, our neighbor's door who we haven't met yet and say, let me pour my heart out to you? More likely the ones we turn to for in times of need, and the ones we celebrate with in times of accomplishment. If somebody's wanting to get in. Those are the people we're with in ongoing relationship. So our focus this week is on becoming intimate with God. And a key element in any relationship is trust. When we're afraid to trust other humans, we create kind of a prison of self-sufficiency that leaves no opening for people to prove themselves worthy of our trust. And our distrust becomes self-perpetuating because we're just too afraid and too disillusioned to ask for help. And we aren't willing to live in the uncertainty that exists between the asking and the receiving. And as we try to protect ourselves from letdowns and unpredictable outcomes, we also deny ourselves the possibility of unexpected gifts. And really, this principle holds true as we relate to God. If we control every step and refuse to make a move until we can see, the next 10 steps down the path, and if we refuse to ever live in uncertainty, we don't really leave a lot of opening for spirit to move and guide us or to provide for us. And just as we need to let go of old preconceptions about God, as we did last week, we may also need to release limiting stereotypes of prayer, which, at its worst, prayer can really devolve into these very hollow recitations of religious prose that we learned when we were kids and we sing our prayers. Or on the other extreme, it can become a reading to God our grocery list of requests. God, needs it to be this way, and I needed this and this and this, and it can't be like this. God, it has to be like this. Yeah. Prayer is a conversation. It's personal, it's intimate. The very act of it reminds us that we're not alone. And as we touched upon last week, there really are countless ways to conceive of God. It needn't wear the face of a personalized deity to be a potent force in our lives. It can be perceived as energy or as something found within, or it doesn't need to be called God at all. We can call it the universe, spirit, the collective unconscious, our higher self, our guardian angel. We can call it a state of consciousness. What's important is to envision ourselves connected to something greater than the collection of thoughts and feelings and physical characteristics and vulnerabilities that we think of as our, self with a small s. Of course, as with everything, our expectations of God are going to affect our experience. If we expect a harsh, unforgiving God, we'll feel a lot of guilt and shame and judgment. That's how our God will show up. If we imagine the non-existence of God, we'll tend to live in a reality of separateness, where we have only the limited resources that we believe a single vulnerable organism can have. Yet, as we envision and begin to expect the reality of God as a limitless benevolent source, we tap into grace beyond anything we can access through linear reasoning and physical And this is the God, this is the God that I invite us all to fall in love with this week. Excuse me a moment, I need my cough button. Thank you. So, for a lot of years, I really had trouble understanding prayer. I just didn't get it. I had no religious upbringing growing up. I had no childhood prayer ritual to draw upon, or God experience, or teaching. And I discovered spirituality on my own, and I had more exposure to meditation than to prayer. Prayer was something I just didn't get until a number of years into studying metaphysics and meditation, yet still quite a while ago. This was a long time ago. I went to my good friend, Reverend Deb Terramani, my best friend, whole wide world. And I asked her, I said, Deb, tell me about prayer. What is it? How do you do it? What? I don't get it. Because Deb, she knows prayer better than anyone I've ever met. She was raised by an Italian American family. She had an Italian immigrant grandmother who spent hours a day on her knees in prayer in a special room of her house that was purely dedicated to God and praying. And Deb just began a life of prayer by her grandmother's side and continued the practice all her life. Some of you may have met Deb over the years. She and I used to do, she's psychic. She also sees angels, just as Emily, who I do some workshops with. Deb has always been very psychically, intuitively, prayerfully open. And she's always prayed. And even as her spiritual beliefs broadened and took a much more metaphysical bent, she stayed very dedicated to prayer. She went on to become a Center for Spiritual Living minister. And when I asked her to explain prayer to me, she gave me kind of the Prayer for Dummies quick lesson and taught me a fourfold path, the structure of which she drew from her Catholic upbringing. So those of you who are raised Catholic, this might sound familiar. The meaning that she equated with the structure, she drew more from her eclectic and New Thought understanding of her adulthood. And I've used it ever since, adding a bit of my own slant to each path. Now, the structure is based on the acronym ACTS, ACTS. And it's 4 steps. Each step, they don't have to be done in any kind of order, but each step offers a deepening of our relationship with God. And of course, there's a million bazillion paths into prayer, probably as many people who pray. That's how many different ways of prayer there are. And this is just one way to start the conversation, but I think it's kind of a fun way. So that's what we're doing tonight. The first letter is A and stands for adoration. The path of adoration, it's all about opening our heart to loving and being loved by God. And a prayer may, but doesn't have to, contain words. And the act of adoration in particular is just 100% feeling. Words are only used to evoke the feeling quality and experience of love, of adoration, of being adored. And the adoration of God also includes adoring the God in each person. Mother Teresa actually made a life's work of adoration. offering love to the poorest of the poor. She lived by the words of Jesus, who said, I quote, "Whatever you did to the least of my brethren, you did it to me," end quote. And so she saw the face of God in each person she served. And she put it, I think, very beautifully when she said, and I'm quoting her now, "When you know how much God is in love with you, then you can only live your life radiating that love," end quote. I used to do this group in person for many years. I mean, really since 1987, I've done some variety of this group. And a man who was part of it, who had been part of it for several years, was leading the evening and offered this beautiful demonstration of adoration one time. After leading the group in a meditation, he silently came to each one of us and washed our feet. He took off our shoes, took off our socks, gently washed our feet. And everybody in that group, we were in tears. It was so moving. It was so heartfelt. And such a simple act left everybody so moved. And anything that touches and lifts the heart can be a path into the spiritual state of adoration. Music can be a powerful vehicle for this, as can be any words, thoughts, places, or images that inspire your deepest heartfelt feelings of inspiration and open-hearted love for God and all God's creatures, for the earth, for other people. And some find it a lot easier to adore God in nature or in a spiritual sanctuary, special places. Singing, chanting, dancing, drumming, these are other ways of lifting the spirit to a place of adoration. And of course, any form of loving kindness to other living beings easily becomes a path of prayerful devotion to God. And if the whole experience of adoring feels elusive, you just can't wrap yourself around it. Instead of doing the adoring, imagine God adoring you. And you might even not even love yourself that much. You might think, I don't, nobody loves me. But just imagine there is this incredible presence around you, loving you the way you've never felt loved before. Even if you've never felt that you've been loved that way, imagination can take us anywhere we've never been. So see what it would feel like if you did believe you were that purely loved. See what it would feel like to be loved that way, and just cultivate it as an inner state. It's a very powerful state of consciousness doing that. So the next letter in our acronym is C, and that stands for contrition. Oh, that's a scary word. But we're not going to do it the Catholic way here. Contrition, as we're looking at it here, is the act of acknowledging any aspect of your perception that has become separate from God, and become aware of it for the purpose of releasing that separateness. Contrition is a heartfelt apology to self and others for seeing faults and failings instead of the perfection God sees in us. It's about acknowledging the ways we've acted from fear instead of love, and how hurtful these acts can be. So contrition is not about blame and guilt. It's not about shame. It's about rectifying hurtful perceptions and actions. It's about putting things right, bringing healing. And it's a path of compassion. And as I said, healing, not of punishment. It's also an opportunity to let go of being right. In the fall, we actually dedicated a whole lesson to releasing separateness and opening to the miracles that follow when we relax our position of judgment and self-righteousness, to simply say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And the act of contrition suggested here is raised to an even higher octave as we release our stand, not just against each other, but against God. We kind of can even brace ourselves against God. I can handle it, God. I don't quite trust you. I'll handle it. I can't quite surrender to God because I gotta work it out first. Then maybe I'll let you do that much. So here's a few practices that give some examples of prayerful contrition. One might be to take a daily, monthly, or life inventory of fearful perceptions and actions, and then just turn them over to God to be healed. Another, look in a mirror and apologize to yourself for self-critical thoughts and for seeing anything less in yourself than your own perfection, your own worthiness, your own beauty. See yourself as God does, innocent and wholly worthy of love. Another is either by talking to someone in person or in prayer, where you're not in another person's physical presence, but you're in your own meditative, prayerful time, and you talk from your higher self to their higher self. Very powerful way to, we'll talk more about that next month. In person or in spirit, apologize to others for our judgmental thoughts and words and hurtful actions. Anyone who you haven't forgiven yet, even though you think they're the ones that did it to me, I don't have anything. Holding that lack of forgiveness is you creating separateness from God. And that's something to say you're sorry for. That's something to apologize for, because that only hurts you. And you can just start by apologizing to yourself. Lynn, I'm so sorry. I've been holding judgment in my heart and lack of forgiveness in my heart towards so-and-so and so-and-so. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. That's the way to start. And take any other steps that feel appropriate to rectify hurtful actions toward other people. Now, another would be to feel the complete unconditional acceptance and forgiveness of God, healing any lack of forgiveness that you're holding toward yourself or another. Recognize that you are always innocent in the eyes of God. Even if you can't forgive yourself, imagine that God has forgiven you. So next comes T. T stands for Thanksgiving. And as we've talked about here multiple times, gratitude is a highly magnetic state of mind, very high vibrational state. It promotes healing in our physical body. It leaves us feeling happy and at peace. And it naturally attracts to us our highest good. Because what we give attention to is what multiplies in our life. The more we acknowledge our blessings, the more blessings we have. Thanksgiving gives energy and attention to what we've received instead of to what we lack. And as a prayer, it's all about saying thank you instead of I want. And to practice Thanksgiving, just Thank God often for everything you have now. Give thanks for all your successes and joys from the past. Give thanks for the love you have in your life now, the abundance you have in your life now. Give thanks for what you want to create in your life as though it's already happened. And begin to notice the small moments in your day when circumstances conspire in your favor. You know, a parking place opens up just as you need one, and you just say, oh, thank you, God. Or you live up north and it's icy and you almost slip on the ice and you catch yourself. Just say, thank you, God. You're holding your favorite glass, you almost drop it and, watch it shatter and you catch it. Say, thank you, God. An unexpected check shows up in the mail. Thank you, God. Thank God for every small gift. You see a quarter in the street. Thank you, God. And at the end of the day, take a moment to review all the blessings you've received. Put yourself to sleep this way at night. Years ago, Oprah Winfrey popularized the practice of keeping a gratitude journal. She invited her whole TV audience to write down at least 5 things every day to be grateful for. I thought it was just a brilliant thing to just get masses of people doing. And not only is this a lovely daily prayer of gratitude, but over time it becomes a really interesting journal of your life journey, told from the perspective of your blessings rather than, and this crappy thing happened today, and then so-and-so, could you believe she did that? It's like a whole slant on your life that might be a really beautiful thing to read after time has passed. And give thanks even for the experiences and life lessons that feel painful. In another lesson here, I told a story of a woman, she was a friend of mine, and also in my group. She healed her melanoma. I actually gave her a book by Catherine Ponder, and this is really a long time ago. There wasn't that much written on spiritual healing. It must have been maybe 40 or more years ago. And Catherine Ponder was one of the early Unity movement writers. She talked a lot about affirmations. So my friend she had melanoma, which just ruled her life. She always had to watch out for sun exposure. She couldn't go outside unless she had a big hat and long sleeves, no matter how hot it was. She could never just go out swimming and do fun stuff. She never could. And she had to have little minor surgeries every 6 weeks that were minor, but every 6 weeks gets really painful. It's serious, if one of them kept going, she could easily die. And she battled this illness. She was mad at it. It was her fight in life. And she followed a little exercise in one of Catherine Ponder's books. And she started writing the affirmation, thank you, God, for cancer. Thank you, God, for cancer. And she just wrote reams and reams, over and over and over and over again. And she was my housemate at the time. So we were really close. And the first day or two, it really infuriated her. She'd just come down like, this just makes me so mad. Thank you, God, for cancer. I don't thank God for cancer. And after doing it for about 3 days, she said, it's so weird, but for the first time in 15 years, I'm feeling kind of peaceful around cancer. It's weird. I mean, I don't know about this affirmation stuff, but this is something I haven't felt, so I'm going to keep going. And she did. She just kept going and going and going. Every day she'd write her affirmations. And then the weirdest things started happening. She'd go for her 6-week checkups, and all of a sudden, they weren't finding anything to cut. They weren't showing any precancerous growths. And she wound up moving out. We lost touch a little bit, but I ran into her about a year and a half later, and she said, I'm pretty much cancer-free now. I haven't had anything cut off my body since those affirmations. Just one of those, great demonstrations of how powerful this stuff is. She did this with total earnestness and sincerity. And I think that was a big part of it. She just put herself wholeheartedly into it. And as we give thanks for situations that feel hurtful, one thing we do is we let go of struggle. And that in and of itself helps us become more open to healing. And as we call something a gift, we start to get the lesson, the blessing. We don't need the pain of it anymore. We don't need it to catch our attention. Okay, next is S. The last letter in our acronym APTS. S, that stands for surrender. And this last step, it's about humility. It can be a tough one. It's an ego deflating step that requests to know and do God's will instead of our own. It's when we admit our own powerlessness in the face of God's power. And humility actually is an integral part of the teachings of Alcoholics Anonymous, the whole 12-step movement. There's a big book, the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, a big blue book published by AA that outlines the 12-step philosophy. And it actually points to the lack of humility as being a crippling defect of our culture. And the book describes how we attach so much pride to our capacity to control our destiny, solely through our own cleverness and management and hard work. Now, the downfall to this, and I'll just quote from the book here again, I quote, as long as we place self-reliance first, a genuine reliance upon a higher power is out of the question. The basic ingredient of all humility, a desire to seek and do God's will, is missing, end quote. So we can't really rely on God if we're relying solely on ourselves. And the absence of humility goes hand in hand with a belief in separateness. As we rigidly propel our lives forward solely on the power we have, as separate beings, as particles, rather than as waves all connected, we invite the stress and the emptiness and really the desperation that can lead to addiction. Not only is humility a step in the healing of addiction, but addiction can be an end product of its absence. And just as AA teaches the necessity of admitting powerlessness over alcohol or whatever drug before healing can begin, we all need at some point to admit our total powerlessness over the fears and limited vision of our ego. The ego is our particle self, as opposed to, our big flowy wave self. Just to draw from a physics analogy. The minute we believe ourselves to be completely free of our ego is usually when we start to be stuck. Surrender invites us to look at where our attachments lie. Wanting something, feeling desire to have or do or be something, that's powerful. Because where we have passion and desire, we have some creative energy to create movement and growth. However, we lose power when desire becomes attachment. In other words, when the feeling of, oh, I want this, becomes the feeling of, oh, I just can't live or be happy or feel good about myself, and so on, without this. I must have this or else I won't be okay. And then instead of being fueled by the excitement of creating what we want, we become controlled by the fear of not getting it. And we stop being open to the highest possible outcome because we've become fixated on the only outcome our fearful ego self can imagine. So to practice surrender, try working with maybe a simple prayer that could start with, "Thy will, God, not mine. Thy will be done, God." You could experiment with saying this over and over many times a day, especially when life isn't going according to your ego's plans. And now, as you say this prayer, take a breath. Let yourself exhale. Let your body relax. And imagine that a better way is about to open up as you hand the reins over to God. Maybe even have a little laugh at yourself, like, "Oh, I thought I could do this better than God. What was I thinking?" And as an exercise, try mentally or in writing, listing all the things you're attached to. In fact, let's just do that in your mind. Close your eyes for a moment and just reflect on all those things you feel attached to. All the things you currently have, as well as things that are future outcomes that you're just really, you just can't let go of. Now, attachment isn't just about what you love or what you want. Attachment exists wherever we feel I can't be complete, happy, safe, fulfilled, etc., without this. And your list might include people, jobs, material possessions, your health, aspects of your identity and life circumstances, just to name a very few. And as you identify each of these things, imagine yourself letting go of them, and life is still good. Life is still meaningful and joyful even without them. You don't have to figure out how. Just imagine you could still be blissfully happy and at peace and on purpose without any of these things. I've seen people do it. All the things we think, "Oh, I can't let go of that." Not that. People have. People do. Imagine turning your life path completely over to God in absolute trust that whatever planned Spirit has in store for you is infinitely better than your own. Infinitely. So take a breath on that and know that it is safe to fall into the hands of God because God is there. God has always had your back. You just haven't let go. So in this moment, just let go, let God, open your eyes again. Oh, come back, maybe a little more peaceful. So our assignment this week is going to be about working with these 4 paths. And there's a lot of different ways. You could focus on only one. You could see which one has the most appeal and start there. You could start with the one that feels the most difficult, trusting that there's going to be some important lessons in facing the challenge of it. You could even incorporate all 4 steps into a daily prayer ritual, giving a little bit of attention to each one. In fact, there's a very elegantly simple prayer that was popularized some years back in one of Joe Vitale's books. It's of Ho'oponopono origin. It's a Hawaiian healing practice. And it goes, "I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And it really captures all four steps using the barest minimum of words. And I think sometimes these very minimal prayers can be the strongest because our head doesn't get all bogged down and, we don't get heady about it. We just stay in the feeling of the words. We just let the words be evocative. And this prayer, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, I love you, is meant to be directed to God. And it's in my experience, it's hard not to feel peaceful and uplifted after repeating this prayer several times. Start with God, aim it to yourself, aim it to anyone in your life that you're still holding in judgment, or you feel that you've hurt, or you feel has hurt you. Just try that prayer. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And why say I'm sorry, please forgive me to someone who really did us wrong? Well, it's because at the level of our higher selves, we can never be harmed. We're beyond harm. And we're beyond doing harm. There's a level where we are all connected in God and in love. And we exist beyond the dances we do in our human form. So to go to the highest place saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, is saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me for getting so caught up in this human illusion that I forgot that truly we are connected in love. And then thank you for the lessons I've learned with you. I love you. Now, the way I've worked with these four paths in my group sessions is by creating a short little message for each one. And then I would print them out on separate handouts. And I would, I'd have everybody in the group just pick what, here they are. Oh, look at me, I have them right here. I would have everyone pick one kind of randomly. There's a lot of each one. Letting synchronicity deliver to each person the path of prayer they most need right now. So I'm going to do that for all of you here. I'll read through all the messages, then I'm going to pick one randomly for each one of you. Okay, A for adoration. Know how much you are loved. Know how much love you have to give. Let your heart break open with joy. Contrition. Your blame, shame, guilt, and separateness are all an illusion that you now release. You are forgiven and you radiate compassion and forgiveness toward others. And these are all written down in the written materials that I'll give you access to. Thanksgiving. Count the many blessings you have now. All the circumstances of your life conspire to assist you toward your highest good. The more you recognize this, the more you heal, prosper, and thrive. Surrender. Let go, and let go some more. Trust in God's plan for you. There's nothing more you need to do. So I'm going to pick one for everyone. Just going to go down my screen. Going to start with Cynthia. Cynthia, the prayer that came to you is contrition. Contrition. Deb, you get surrender. Let go, let go. Romina, Thanksgiving. You're blessed. Sandra, surrender, let go. Mackenzie, surrender, let go. Doing a lot of letting go so far. Sheldon, contrition. Mary, contrition. Randy, thanksgiving. Your thanksgiving. Honey, thanksgiving. Wow. Tech guy Bill, contrition. Sherry, contrition. Dana, thanksgiving. I had to like check these. Where's adoration? No, they're all still in here. Wow, very interesting. Very interesting. Contrition, thanksgiving, and surrender. Let's see, let's do me. Oh, adoration. Phew. Phew. All right. Well, I do love you guys. So just, I want to share a little story. If you have any doubt as to the efficacy of this method of being guided to a path, a little synchronistic like juju, I want to tell a story of a woman who came to my group. I was using these handouts, and she also had some doubts too. And she picked the path of Thanksgiving. She was like, oh, that's nice. She didn't really, oh, Christine, oh no, I missed you. How could I do that? Thank you. Oh, you're with me, adoration. Yay. When she first did the exercise, I said she picked Thanksgiving. Didn't seem to apply to her life very meaningfully. She just didn't get it. But then she attended another event with me, a different location several weeks later, different exercise, but I happened to be using the same handouts. And once again, she picked Thanksgiving. Now, the coincidence of receiving the same message twice, she did give it a little bit more attention this time, but it still didn't seem to penetrate all that deeply. She did, however, post one of the messages on her fridge, and she kept the other one tucked into her wallet. And more weeks passed, and as she was leaving her apartment in kind of an urban setting, nowhere near anywhere that she had attended classes with me, really far away from locations, she saw a little purple slip on the pavement. Looked kind of like that. And it so reminded her of the purple handouts I used in my class on prayer that she had to just go over and look. And to her amazement, it was one of those same handouts, the one with the message, guess what? Thanksgiving. And, she figured, okay, it must have somehow dropped out of her wallet or be the one from her fridge. She somehow got caught in her clothes or something. And so she looked in her wallet. There it was, her little Thanksgiving message. It was still there, hadn't fallen out. So she went inside and looked on her fridge. That one was still there too. This was a third, same exact handout. And this time she knew that that message was really meant for her. It was a little bit of a miracle saying, be thankful, not just a meaningless coincidence. And she embraced it with all of her being. And I actually met with her months after this experience and was just struck by how different she was. She seemed happier than I had ever seen her. Everything in her life was going great. And she kept saying over and over how blessed she felt for so many things in her life. And she didn't even realize how much she was overflowing and gushing with gratitude until I brought it to her attention. And then she did attribute it to the miracle of Thanksgiving. So really trust whichever path picked you. Trust that it's somehow important for you, and it is going to take you on the path of your highest good in ways maybe you just can't even dream. Spend the week immersing yourself in this path. Create some form of practice. Give it up as an offering to God. Give it forward as an offering to other people, and receive it as a gift from God and from those around you. Prayer is an ongoing conversation with God, and what begins as a bridge between our small sense of self and the greatness of spirit ultimately leads us to know our oneness with God. What begins as communion becomes, no, what begins as communication, becomes communion. So when prayer is truly successful, the need for it becomes obsolete. In other words, as long as we perceive ourselves in relationship with God, we need prayer. When we experience ourselves as being one with God, prayer becomes unnecessary. So, there's more to this. In fact, there's a meditation that I'd like you to experience, but because it's getting late, I want to suggest that you go on the hidden page of the website where all of these other materials are stored. There should be a separate meditation on communion, on just taking us deeply into prayer. And I'd love for you to check that out. If you don't know how to access the other materials, there's a lot more that goes along with this live class. There's fairly extensive written materials, more than I can get to here. There are also recordings. There's a recording of a live class. We'll probably have this class up soon. If you get to it too quickly, you'll probably see one from a previous year. There's also meditations that we did in the sound studio that have just been extracted from all the other teaching material, so you just get the meditation alone. I'm pretty sure we have this meditation there. Go there and check that out. It would be a great way to put yourself to sleep tonight. Now, to get to the additional materials, go to my website, lynnwoodland.com, and look for the Miracles course option on the menu bar, and click on that. That'll show a drop-down menu of the months of the year. You'll want to look for January. We're now in the 4th week of January, so drop down to January, click on that. You'll see the weeks. Go to the 4th week in January, click on that, and that'll take you to a page that requires a code to have access to. And the code you type in is 20 capital T capital E, 2010. Letters have to be capitalized, 2010. If you missed any of the previous weeks, you can go back. I'll give the codes for all the different weeks. First week in January was 21 UL. Second week, 18 RA. Third week, 19 SN. Fourth week, 20 TN. And Tech Guy put the link for this week into the chat, so you can just cut and paste that if you'd like. Take you right there. So I want to open it up for sharing about this processing. How do you feel about your prayer for this week? Questions, thoughts when we process through the material tonight? Anyone who needed or wanted a reading earlier and didn't get one, I'll stay until everybody's got what you need tonight. And if anyone